Hi, I'm Scott, and I was once a hardcore Democrat. As a matter of fact, I was such a hardcore Democrat that I was even the president of a state chapter of the College Democrats. Which state I won't say because I don't want to get doxxed. More on that later. First, I should tell you why I joined the Democratic Party to begin with. My first foray into the world of politics came more so by way of religion, and by that I mean by way of hating religion. Basically, I was one of those edgy atheist 13-year-olds who wanted to debate everyone into believing that God didn't exist. I believed that religion gave way to dogma and undermined people's ability to think for themselves. On some level, I still believe that, but I've recently softened my stance after listening to intelligent Judeo-Christian figures like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro make convincing arguments for the value of some religious ideas. But back to good old edgy atheist teenage me. When I was a teenager in the early 2000s, it was Christian conservatives that often told me that certain topics, particularly as it pertained to sex and violence, were off limits or taboo. They even told me I couldn't make jokes about religion, and especially not about Christianity, because it was offensive. This is where I developed a deep hatred for censorship. I have many objections to censorship, not the least of which is that I deeply enjoy talking about dark, difficult, and potentially offensive conversation topics. Comedian Louis C.K. once put how I feel into words in a very interesting way, saying this.
I guess that people are talking about things that make you go, oh my God, that's cringing, right?
Yeah, I think that's what they mean. Yeah,
To me, that territory, cringe is it's repelling away from something, so it's like an area you don't want to think about. I don't want to think about that. To me, it's fun to take a deep breath, which is the opposite of a cringe.
Yes.
And walk in there.
That's exactly right.
And see what's in there.
Yes.
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff in there.
That's the essence of you.
I think so.
It really is.
Look, if you can make people take a whole zone of their thinking that they're scared of, and you can make them take a breath and go in there and then have a good time, I think that's positive.
This is how I feel in a nutshell. I want to discuss ideas that others avoid because they are, naturally, the most unexplored topics, leaving the most to be discovered. There are unpredictable, exciting, and fascinating possibilities when breaking taboos in conversation, especially between two or more intellectually advanced minds. So, to reiterate, I joined the Democratic Party largely out of my hatred for stuck-up, censorious conservatives who didn't want me to be able to engage in honest conversations or even tell jokes. I was a massive Obama supporter, and once I started college in 2013, my first stop was my school's chapter of the College Democrats, where I became an executive board member in 2014. And it was that very year, 2014, where things started to get very weird for me as a liberal. The left began to show signs that it was morphing into a hostile, race and gender-obsessed cult. First, Gamergate saw an alliance of hardcore feminists and out-of-touch media elites attack my longtime hobbying group, Gamers, with false accusations of misogyny. Then there was the Ferguson riots, wherein my Democratic colleagues were, to my abject horror, defending rioting over the death of a thug who assaulted a police officer, all in the name of so-called social justice. Finally, there was Sam Harris, a longtime hero of mine as a secular liberal, being slandered as a racist for factually accurate speech about the dangers of Islamic extremism. Here is where I began to notice a disturbing trend of so-called progressives putting women and minorities into a separate category than white males. A category, nay, a class, meant to be exempted from any and all criticism, no matter how reasoned or factually accurate. All of these events, Ferguson, Gamergate, and the slandering of Sam Harris, took place in 2014, and began a period during which I both openly objected to the intersectional oppression obsession at times, and also played lip service to it at others out of a necessity for social and political clout, as I was trying to both jumpstart my burgeoning political career and maintain my tightly knit social circle of student journalists and college Democrats. This period of severe cognitive dissonance went on until the political meteorite that was the election of Donald Trump. Like many liberals, Trump's election shattered my world. I was despondent when he won. But when I came out of my own Trump derangement syndrome stupor and accepted the result of the 2016 election, it wasn't the actions of Trump supporters that began my political evolution. It was the actions of his now completely unhinged opponents. My very own Democratic colleagues, who had devolved into a mad cult, demanding ideological purity in the name of opposing Trump, eschewing any maintenance of key liberal values, namely freedom of speech. In 2017 came an event so shocking it made me ask for the first time in my life whether I should leave the Democratic Party. The UC Berkeley riot was an unprecedented case of the Democratic establishment refusing to defend freedom of speech, and in the case of the college Democrats, my very own organization, openly supporting the use of violence for political means. This event shook me to my core, as other high-up leaders in the college Democrats dismissed my concerns, and some even demanded my resignation, telling me, a Jew, that I was a Nazi for saying that Milo Yiannopoulos' antics in Berkeley were not valid cause for violence and rioting. So, I went looking for others who shared my concerns, and began a journey wherein I discovered the likes of Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, and other members of the intellectual dark web, who guided me along a path of political evolution, and as I now realize, redemption. After the UC Berkeley riots, I slowly lost faith in the idea that I could reform the Democrats from within, as I continued to work for Democratic campaigns and organizations until one final atrocity made me decide to walk away from the Democratic Party for good. The kangaroo court trial of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh was the final straw. It showed me that freedom of speech was not the only core Western liberal value that Democrats would undermine in their pursuit of a new intersectional world order, but that due process, the presumption of innocence, and all other pillars of Western political thought were now on the chopping block as well. So in October of 2018, I decided I had had enough. I officially left the Democratic Party after years of watching them immolate any sense of reason, proportion, or decency they once had. My exodus made longtime friends turn away from me and eliminated many once lucrative career opportunities. I fled from my East Coast home state in 2018 to start anew in the Midwest. There, I started a meetup group for other fans of the intellectual dark web, most of whom were similarly disaffected liberals. Some of these individuals became my closest friends, and two of them even started a podcast with me. I even have a girlfriend who accepts my political stance despite being a Democrat herself. Socially, I have overcome the grave mistake that I made by being a part of the intersectionalist cult of the Democratic Party. My career, on the other hand, is always in grave danger. You may notice that I do not show my face on this channel. I plan to someday, but for now, I won't. My fear is not that being publicly identified could lead to losing friendships or any other form of social ostracization. I care not for the friendship of those who would cast me out for being a free thinker. Rather, my fear is that I would be made destitute should I be identified by my employer as my true self, the Scott Veritas you hear on this channel. It is an alias, not my real name. But in many ways, Scott Veritas is a much more real version of who I am than the person who goes to work each day, biting his tongue and hiding his true thoughts as his coworkers prattle on about the white supremacist patriarchy, and HR asks why I haven't put pronouns in my email signature yet. I would debate these points, but I know better than to think I could do so without being promptly fired for my wrongthink. I seek not to destroy my new life for an altruistic version of a Scott that only ever tells the truth, even if it costs him his job. This channel is a way for me to do so, at least for now, anonymously, with minimal risk to my employment. But as it grows, I feel the desire more and more to fully commit to my ideals and show myself to the world as I truly am. A free thinker, a truth teller, an apostate who chose Veritas, the value of truth above all else, over the comfort of the mob, the affirmations of a mad herd, the spoils of a life spent working my way up the ladder of political gamesmanship within the Democratic Party. I left the Democratic Party because they became what I have always hated. Censors, elitist snobs hell-bent on telling others, artists, comedians, and philosophers alike, what is off bounds, while filling their followers' minds with easy answers to hard questions until their brains are turned to mush and their souls are corrupted. Creating automatons of the intersectional army, eerily evocative of the brainwashed masses of the moral majority, who were my first ever ideological foe as a young liberal skeptic. They are one and the same. Authoritarians whom I cannot help but stand against. Because a world ruled by them is a world I could not bear to live in. A world without joy, nuance, proportion, and most of all, a world without truth. Utter chaos, the embodiment of hell. Jordan Peterson, a man I greatly admire, once said that to speak the truth and be punished for it is a great risk only in the short term, but to remain silent in the face of evil is a far greater risk. To remain silent, to blend in with authoritarian orthodoxy until it is too late to stop its march towards tyranny, will cause so much more pain in the long term than the initial exile that comes with telling the truth. So now, I have left the intersectionalist cult. And you know why? Because I chose truth over comfort. I cannot be bribed with so-called clout in the realm of political and media elites whose favor I once foolishly sought. I know how empty it truly is after having been betrayed by those who chose expediency and dogma over truth. I can say from experience that nothing scares a cult more than someone who simply walks away. Someone who doesn't need or want what they're selling. Someone who knows the truth behind all of the simple solutions and slogans that shut down outside thought and ideas. Someone who was once under their control, but is no longer. It terrifies them, because if one person can escape their grasp, then we all can.